with Beard. Hello, podcast cutans. It's Cathy Cat. Ladybeard.
Coming at you with another mind-boggling installment of
Cat with Beard.
How are you, young lady? Lovely to see you.
It's lovely to see you. And today's episode is actually about one of the things I don't love to talk about. It's
Bring it
about
on. What
the
is it?
Japanese railway system.
Oh, the railway!
Let's launch this hype train.
The Japanese railway system. First things first, it keeps the country together.
Oh, yeah.
Secondly, I feel if you live in a Western nation, you don't really have a concept of just how gigantic and complex and important to society it is.
It literally is the blood vein that goes through the entire country of Japan. Entire nation. And since there's also high-speed travel like the Shinkansen, it connects very, very fastly the main capitals of Japan, making certain business trips, daily go and return possible. So we're talking about how important and amazing and maybe very different to your country the Japanese railway system is today. Because I am also the host of a program called Japan Railway Journal on NHK World, which is a channel that broadcasts all around the world in English. So about Japan, Japanese culture, and in this case, Japanese railways.
You are arguably an expert in this field.
I'll try and talk a little bit about the wonders and pleasures of railway in Japan. And let's go.
I'm glad you know about it because I don't know anything about it at all. So here we go. Let's get it underway.
So, but railways, depending on which country you're from, some people don't really go or have the opportunity to be on railways. I know a lot of my American kittens out there, but said I've never been on a train.
Oh, really?
Which surprised me
wow,
because
okay,
that's more of a car country, while Japan is more of a train country.
Yeah, fair enough.
How's that for Australia?
I mean, we have trains. I'm from a relatively small city, so our train network is not really substantial. But there's the middle of the city, and then there's like some lines that go out like that. But, you know, I mean, I never really caught the train. I was a bus catcher for me to get home and to school and that kind of thing. What about Deutschland?
Well, I'm in Munich. We have a very complex system. We have the tram that's just overground. We have the S-Bahn, which is overground and underground. Then we have the U-Bahn, which is the underground one. And then we also have the connection into other cities, which use the ICE, which then connects us to other cities or sometimes more regional areas as well. And then we have the BOB, which just brings you over to the Alps and stuff, which has space for skiing. So we are actually more of a train country, I guess, than some other countries are.
Well, you just boggled my mind. Hang on, I thought that Germany was going to be far less complex with the trains than Japan, but you got your own ecosystem of train networks going on as well.
I think it depends on which of the capitals it is, but generally the capitals have a love of train and connecting and public transport because, again, it is cheaper for a lot of people and it's also probably greener to use that as well. And Germany's trying to be very green as well. What was your first impression of Japanese railways when you came here?
Oh, my first impression is just the absolute magnitude of various lines there are. In Tokyo, there's not just like one train company. In South Australia, there's like the train company, and then that's it, right? And that's a government organization. So there's the trains, and that's it, right? Here, there's like 10 or more different companies operating trains with their own lines, and like one of them's government, but a lot of them are privately held, and then so they're all different codings, different colors, they're separate companies, and your ticket for one doesn't necessarily get you onto the next one, and you might have to go 6 different companies to get to one journey. It's pretty overwhelming, to be frank, when you first get to Tokyo.
Yeah, for example, a lot of people will have heard about the Rail Pass, the Japan Rail Pass, which is something that you can apply for in your country, and then you can come to Japan and travel around Japan for 1 week or I think 2 weeks for much cheaper than people who live in Japan. Ladybeard and I, we can't use that Japan Rail Pass. You guys can. But what's interesting, again, that one only works for certain types of trains, mainly the GR, but then other ones it will not work on. So which confuses people. Why does it not work? Because you come in with the mind of it all belongs to the same place. It doesn't. A lot of things are privatized. It's very, very confusing. That's why it's really, really good for you guys when you come to Japan to have an electronic IC card like a Suica or Pasmo. Those ones are literally, you just charge it with a certain amount of money and you just tap it to the barriers.
Yeah.
And that will take your brain off having to figure out who belongs to who.
Yeah. Who belongs to who? But yeah, it is a very, very vast and complex network of rails, and that's just within Tokyo. Then they go between the cities, and then the smaller, like the country areas also have their own train networks and such.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of rural train lines, and sometimes like really small ones as well that literally just have one train car that is there, and they're trying to keep it alive. We talk a lot about on Japan Railway Journal how some of the rural railways really are struggling to survive, especially having had the pandemic with less ridership, people trying to avoid crowded places. So all those rural railways, they really have different ways of trying to stay alive and stuff. So that's a topic if you're curious to find out more about that. Definitely check out Japan Railway Journal. I'm probably going to plug that a couple of times here. But what is your favorite type of train? This is a random question I would like to throw out there.
The choo-choo train, of course. The old timey steam engines, of course. You can't go past them.
Oh, that's classic.
A little bit all the old. How can you sneeze at that? Thomas the Tank Engine was one of those, wasn't he? Probably still is one.
It's funny. There are also a couple of Thomas-inspired trains here
in Japan. The Japanese love Thomas the Tank Engine.
And a couple of steam engines that they actually have, for example, recovered and try to make run and do all the checks and stuff. I find the love for trains is probably the highest in Japan compared to anywhere in the world.
It's really interesting actually. There are train otakus in Japan who just love trains.
Yeah, and it's not just that, it's also the regions will love their own train. If they, for example, if a certain region has a type of train that they want to keep in business, they sometimes theme it, or they have a different layer on top of it, or inside of it they add smells or some sort of entertainment. There recently has been actually, a wrestling train. So
a wrestling train? What?
Yes, you would get a wrestling show in the train. The wrestlers would fight each other on the running train.
Do you know, I actually participated in a train wrestling match, but I thought we just did that. Our company did it to be funny. I didn't realize there's now the wrestling train.
And it's not the wrestling train. It's like a special event that will sometimes happen.
In that case, I was in that.
You did that? Oh, Ladybeard's been on one of the wrestling trains. Is that difficult to wrestle on the train?
It's not a ring, that's for sure.
There's nothing to bounce your fall.
Yeah, and there's none of that, and then there's the audience sitting right here either side on the benches. It's pretty funny.
Okay, what did you have to be careful about when wrestling on a train?
Being on a train and all that encompasses. First things first, the train's moving. The thing's not stable. It's going jugga, 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 because part of the appeal was it's like an old-timey train. It's not some new, modern, well-adjusted gravity train. Gravity train? It's, it's flinging you around the place and whatnot, so it's not very stable. Firstly, there's that. Secondly, the way we did it in our company was, like, getting onto the train at a station was like your ring entrance. So everyone had to be waiting at the stations in time at your entrance. And then if you got eliminated from the match, you had to go to the back carriage and wait there to the next station when you had to get off the train and all this kind of stuff. So it's, and then of course there's no ropes, there's no mat. There's a lot that you're actually not allowed to do. You're not allowed to hang off the handrails and all this kind of stuff.
Oh,
so,
okay, there's a couple of rules in there as well.
Well, yeah, because the train, people don't want you breaking the train.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. It was, a lot of the trains, as you said, the train is a character unto itself. And so you can't go destroying the train. So, the whole thing.
Ooh, I'm really glad I asked this question.
If you were badly organized and you missed your entrance to the train at your station, you've just ruined the flow of the entire match. So,
of course, because there's no new contestant entering at the next station.
Well, it's not like you could. Yeah. So, the normal ways of handling things in a wrestling match are, out the window, really. You're on a train.
Nice. I'm
funny.
so glad you've done that.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Wrestling on a train. Is that somewhere on the YouTubes? No?
Oh, I don't know, actually. It may be on DDT's, what do you call it? Streaming Majig website. Watch the videos here on it. Something.
Okay. Well,
that was the greatest plug in history, wasn't it? The website,
plug.
watch the videos on it, something.
Yeah, if we all find it, we'll put it in the description.
DDT Pro Wrestling, that's what happened. I was there. My match of the train would have been 2018, something like that. If you can find it, there you go.
Ladybeard wrestling on the train. The memorable experience on trains, apart from wrestling on it.
I really am thrilled when I can sit down and I don't need to stand up on the train.
Point.
That's a really happy memory is once I got on the train and I really wanted a seat because I was tired, and then there was a seat and I sat down and I fell asleep. One of the interesting things about the train from my perspective is this. I find it quite frustrating, to be honest. But in Tokyo, in the trains, in the wintertime, they pump the heating.
Oh, so hot.
Really hot on the train. But of course, it's freezing outside. I think we had this conversation when I went on my tirade about my hatred for the season of winter.
Oh, yeah. That's when my ear exploded.
But so you're outside and you're freezing with your big jacket on. Then you get into the train, you're packed in like a sardine with everyone else, and now it's super hot on the train.
You're sweating
so
into
you sweat under your clothes, so you go outside to the cold again, and now you get sick because you're sweating and now it's freezing.
Yeah. Some trains are a little bit overheated or cooled down, but it actually brings us back to because not everything belongs to the same owner. Some trains are actually kind of cold in winter, I heard. A friend of mine said, they don't heat my train as much in winter.
Really?
So she said, I'm kind of cold. So it depends on which service runs them, which company runs them. But memorable train experience I would like to share is there are a lot of tourist trains in Japan, and you can imagine it like a high-class restaurant on wheels.
Oh, okay, yeah. Tell me more.
Or a high-class hotel on wheels.
Okay.
So, for example, one I will always remember is the Tohoku Emotion. Tohoku is the area that got very much hit by, the
Oh, yes, the earthquake, yes.
So the Tohoku Emotion really prides itself in running again.
Okay.
And also they really, literally, they will serve you a high-class meal on board. You have like a nice table. Even the packages, like the little boxes and plates and which is all done by artists or artisans from Tohoku.
That's lovely, wow.
And then the food will also be local to the area. They will have some specific things. And just the paneling in the train will be like arts and crafts from Tohoku. So they're really celebrating Tohoku.
That's lovely.
But what got me the most, and I did tear up, is people will always celebrate that this train has come back after the disaster and everything.
Ah, I see.
So when you're going past and there is a field with just a random granny in the field trying to do her field work, she will stand up and she will wave at the train.
Oh, that's lovely.
There's certain areas where kids will like try and run along the train and wave at the train. And then there is an area where a group of volunteers will always, whether it snows or it rains, every time the train comes, they will be there with flags and again wave at the train.
That's lovely.
It is very, very moving. So it kind of connects again the pride of the region and like we have this train, like it connects people in a very different way than it maybe does in other countries.
I think you're correct. Trains in Japan, they're well trafficked. The trains
well
of Japan.
Trafficked. Yes.
Well trafficked.
Let's talk about the most trafficked station in the world.
Oh my goodness! What is the most trafficked train station in the world, Cathy Cat?
In the world, ladies and gentlemen, it is not in whichever country you might have thought it is. It is in Japan. Actually, the most trafficked stations in the world are said to be, all three, actually, in theory, even 5 are said to be in Japan.
They're all in freaking Japan. A country that loves the trains. To be honest, I thought South Korea was going to get into this list. Nah, all Japan.
Japan.
Because Seoul also has a very confusing rail network for anyone who's experienced the Seoul rail network. But Japan leading the board. So, number 1, busy. Let's start number 3 and go backwards. That'll be more fun.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, number 3.
Yeah. Number 3, Ikebukuro Station.
Ikebukuro Station. If you've come to Japan and you find yourself getting lost at Ikebukuro Station, you're not the first.
Dude, Ikebukuro is, in my opinion, the worst one in terms of getting lost. That station is a nightmare to me. You get off your train, you're underground in Ikebukuro, and it's just everything looks the same. Everything's laid out in squares for the most part, and so you're just endlessly following signs, and it's like east exit this way, but then there's 10 east exits, and you're like, whoa.
It's really hard to meet a friend in Ikebukuro.
Yeah, it really is.
And if you want to get lost, around 2,536,921 people a day go through Ikebukuro Station.
There's a ton of vlogs
that
going
is
through there every
probably
day.
more than people actually live in the area where you're living in.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, actually. Ikebukuro is probably not that well inhabited. But
it's probably
a transit hub.
Yep, it is a transport hub. A lot of people who come in, for example, from Saitama. Saitama is pretty much Tokyo's bed town. A lot of people come in. Everyone who wants to live in bigger apartments and nicer places comes in from Saitama, and the first stop they usually come into is Ikebukuro. So there's a lot of people change there. Next station, number 2.
Number 2 would be the one on Shibuya Station.
Ooh, you probably know Shibuya Station from seeing Shibuya Scramble, which is pretty much featured in every film about Tokyo.
Every image of Tokyo that's ever been had.
That big crossing with loads of people, it's the same crossing.
That's the one. That's Shibuya. So the station there, every day, 3,101,316 human beings pass through that station. Another confusing one, because that one's kind of broken into bits, isn't it?
Shibuya, they have done a lot of construction on recently, and now it kind of separates the subways out a little bit from JR. It's like an up and down and around, and if you get lost to come from A to B, if you don't know your exit, you might take up to half an hour just getting lost inside that station because it is very, very complex, and some pathways, if you take the wrong pathway, will guide you around in a loop around, and very, very hard. Try to manage your way around these stations, find the name of the exit and if possible the number. But then again, it's Shibuya. I think if you are in one part, it will give you numbers for the exits, and then the other parts it will only give you names for exits. So you might actually get super confused. Just say meet at Hachiko.
Yeah, meet at Hachiko.
Meet at Hachiko is like the survival method. Everyone will be meeting at the Hachiko statue of that dog, that really loyal dog.
Very loyal dog.
That's my survival.
Just quick, remind me of the Hachiko story. What happened with him?
So Hachiko would always, every time, accompany his owner to the station and then wait to pick him up and then go back home together.
Right, okay. This is an old-timey story.
It's an old-timey story. And then the owner unfortunately passed away, but Hachiko would still come every day and wait for his owner at the station. Very heartbreaking story. And so to kind of honor that loyalty of Hachiko, there is a statue of that dog Hachiko in front of Shibuya Station where everyone kind of nowadays meets up. Also, afterwards, apparently Richard Gere found the story so moving that he made a Hachiko movie.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
I didn't know that, really.
I watched it in the cinemas in the UK, and it's literally, it will make you just cry the last 30 minutes. You just don't stop crying.
What's the Hachiko movie called? Is it called Hachiko?
I think it's called Hachi. I'm not quite sure, though. Don't quote me on
I
that.
didn't know
Anyways,
that, right.
coming back to railways, number 1 of the busiest station in the world, again, is held by Japan. And you might have guessed it if you've ever been to Japan. It's not Tokyo Station. It is Shinjuku Station.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly under construction, Shinjuku Station. Oh my god, in all the years I've lived here, they never finished construction.
Yeah, right.
It started and it never stopped. It's still under construction as we're speaking right now. Again, find which exit you have to go to, because the south exit is somewhere completely else where you might have to go to. At this point in time, though, I'd like to argue it is not as confusing as Shibuya or Ikebukuro.
Yeah, because they reconstructed it for the Olympics in 2020. 2021, and so that I think has made it somewhat less confusing.
It's less confusing, but Shibuya is definitely up there with one of the most confusing
Shibuya's
ones.
heaps confusing. Yeah, Shinjuku, I find it's I guess there's more people going through there every day. 3,509,753 human beings.
That's probably bigger than some countries.
Pass through Shinjuku Station. Yeah,
Every
you're right.
Every day.
Yeah, that's
Shinjuku?
the city of Melbourne. The entire city of Melbourne passes through Shinjuku Station in one day.
And one day. That's just like to think about the masses of people. Which brings us also to the topic of crowded trains, which I would like to link up straight away.
Crowded trains.
That is probably the first image I got from Japanese train and transportation, was just the crowded trains and people trying to push people into the trains.
Yep.
Have you had the pleasure of doing that?
Listen, we've all been jostled here and there on a train once or twice. I think if you have a newborn baby or you're pregnant, I would advise you to stay away from rush hour trains completely. That would end up badly.
Some tourists seem to think it's like a fun thing to ride on those crowded trains. I've heard a couple of people who are like, oh yeah, I want to go on the crowded trains. They really changed their minds quickly because it is actually physically uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable.
You will be squished against strangers and not in a fun way.
No.
And sometimes, if it's really bad, it will actually be painful.
Yeah.
That's literally how bad it will be. You will be so squished in that you're like literally your rib cage is against someone else's rib cage, and it's not nice.
And what happens as well is, because the train will start its journey out in the boondocks or wherever. And as it comes in, it gradually gets filled up more, right?
More and more.
So when you get to more and more filled up, there's people already in the train, all these people outside the train. No one has a notion of let's wait till the next one. Everyone who needs this train must get on this train.
Get on that train.
So everyone just almost the way
pushes
in. It's
like
sometimes
they leverage itself in by using the head on top of it. Push themselves
all
in.
this kind of thing, right? And so everyone who's already in there, just humans just come at you, and everyone's on the same page. Everyone's at the same boat. We all know we're just trying to get into the standard train. So not a word is spoken by a single human. Yeah. There's no excuse me's. There's no sorry about that. It's just gong 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 gong.
It is wild. And like the train can get up to 200% of capacity. And some of the really crowded trains, it is wild in there, and it's really hard to get in and get out of the trains during rush hour as well. So there's a certain couple of minor things, but the fascinating thing and kind of almost scary thing is when the trains are that crowded and we're at 200% capacity, it is dead silent.
It is. It's very strange.
No one talks because people are partially in pain. They're trying to hold in their feelings. There really is a lot of things going on there. So you're not trying to light a fire. So you don't want to be the noisy foreigner on that train going like, oh, this is hilarious. No, don't do it. Everyone is literally just trying to get to where
everyone is just enduring this awful experience all together. You just want to get to the end of it.
Yes, but if it's not rush hour, you're generally fine. You might not be able to sit down on the train if it's not rush hour. Generally getting a seat is kind of rare unless it's really, really off time. But apart from that, they're super organized. And despite so many people being on the train, they really try every morning to make it happen that the trains are not delayed, which is a miracle.
It's incredible, actually. It's really pretty impressive.
A miracle with the amount of people. You just heard it. 3 million people go through Shinjuku Station.
That's just one station. That's just one station. And so that's happening all over the country, that level of transit node-ness.
Now, let's talk about the pride and joy of Japan, the Shinkansen.
Oh, the Shinkansen! Yay! Everyone's pro Shinkansen. Very quickly, we'll get you from that distant location to this distant location in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it's about 200 miles per hour. The Shinkansen has a straight line. What makes the Shinkansen also so special is the Shinkansen track is not shared with other trains, which makes sure that only the Shinkansen runs on that track. And I think a lot of other railways in other countries have this thing that they have a high-speed train, but it kind of shares the track here or there with other railways, which means if they're kind of delayed, then the high-speed train can't run, like yada yada. And they were just clever, and there's just a dedicated track for the Shinkansen. That's where it runs. It makes it fast. It makes sure that there's no unnecessary delays and stuff like that. Number 2, maglev.
The maglev!
The linear motor. Everyone is excited about that one.
The magnetic levitation device. Is that what it stands for? I just made that up. Is that real?
No questions. Okay, let's do this one more time.
Sorry.
Let me do this one more time.
One more time.
Cut. Let's go in there again. Okay. Number 2 is the maglev.
The maglev.
The linear motor. That is scheduled to run in 2027. Everyone's quite excited. They're running tests here in Japan right now, so sometimes when you hear a vroom, kind of knows.
Is that what that is? The maglev?
I think so, yeah.
Maglev test, all right.
Wow.
I hear those every now and again, and I get kind of like...
What was that? It's 500 miles per hour.
Someone just do time travel or something? What happened?
It is pretty much like time travel, because you get from Tokyo to Osaka. You're supposed to get from Tokyo to Osaka within an hour.
Is that how fast they go? 500 miles an hour?
That's at least what it's supposed to be once they figure this all out.
700 k's per hour. That's preposterously fast.
It's supposed to be the fastest train in the world. Once we have it 100%, I am excited about it.
Tell you what, that thing's going to take off, I reckon. It's going to bloody maglev to the moon. With that kind of
I'm excited about that one, but I'm still a big fan of the Shinkansen. Just that feeling of when the Shinkansen starts and you kind of get gently pushed into your seat.
On Japan Railway journeys, do you ever interfere with those old ones where you have to crank the thingamajig like that to make it go along the track? Those old school...
There are a couple of tourist attractions where people do that. There's a couple of for example, if a railway stopped, they sometimes use the tracks for little entertainment things like that.
Yeah? Have
but
you done
ideally, it would be lovely if they actually managed to keep the railways there, right? And not just people doing it by hand. You actually want to make sure that the railways don't die.
Can actually transport humans.
Exactly, actually transport humans. It's nice to see that some tracks are still being used for that kind of entertainment. But the ideal goal is to make sure that the railways can keep running strong. So if you can take the train in the rural areas, please take the train in the rural areas.
Have a trip. Have a ride, as it were.
There's also, apart from the metro, which you probably know, there's also monorails in Japan, and my personal favorite is the Yuri Kamome.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It's
awesome, right?
Yeah, it's great. I love it. It's so much fun. You sit at the front there, so you get the windscreen in front of you. It's wonderful.
Driver. There's no driver on the Yuri Kamome. It's just all automated, and it kind of it feels like driving through the skyscrapers of Tokyo. It's an experience.
Beautiful. It goes down to Odaiba, which is, how do you describe Odaiba? Reclaimed island, which has a bunch of attractions and interesting things down there.
Odaiba, yeah, that's kind of the artificially part of Tokyo.
Yeah.
The created part of Tokyo.
Great fun riding the monorail down there. That's my favorite thing to do in terms of trains in Tokyo.
It's quite a fascinating experience, and you can be right at the front of the train if no one else is there. Even though recently, which I found very interesting, they actually, I could see 2 drivers.
Oh, yeah?
At the front of the monorail. They must have been doing some tests there. Which was new to me. I'm like, hey, there's actually people there. People were actually taking videos of the people. Mentioning people taking videos, not the Shinkansen, the Yamanote line, which is like the heart of Tokyo. It's a circular line. That was for 2 days. Stopped at the beginning of the year.
That messed me up. I was going to go meet my buddies. That messed me up.
Yeah, that was probably not happening then, was it?
No, I met my buddies. I just had to go via a different route. There's the Yamanote is this circular line which just never stops going all day. From like 5 a.m. till like midnight. One goes this way, the other goes that way, and they just keep on going all day.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating part. Like the Yamanote line, you will, if you come to Tokyo, you will ride the Yamanote. There is no question about that. It connects all the most important points in Tokyo, all the most known points, and the big stations, Ikebukuro and Shinjuku and Shibuya are also, all 3 of those are actually on the Yamanote line as well. And we come here generally using the Yamanote line as well, to Bunka Hoso as well. So this is like a really important one. And another fascinating thing is, again, with the Yamanote line, it comes every couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And it's on time.
All the trains are on time. It's remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think Japan has up to any other country is just how on time they are.
Punctuality. If the strange event that the train is late for some reason, then
there
they give you
usually a good reason for it.
There's normally a great reason, like there was an explosion or something like that. But they'll give you they'll give you a little note to show your boss saying that the train was late as evidence of the fact you didn't just miss the train, because there's no way. Normally, if you say, "Oh, the train was late," without that evidence, everyone's like, "No, it wasn't. You sleepyhead."
Jenny, if you, for example, come from further outside, like say, for example, from Chiba, and your train is delayed for about 10 minutes, at the station there will be these slips that are lying out. That's what you mentioned. Will then prove by the railway company that you're late for a reason, which I find interesting, because not just for students being tardy, it's being used. If you work at the office, you have to show that. If you're late without the slip, you might get the slip.
Yeah. Okay. So now, what actually? Never actually experienced someone being late without the slip. What happens if you are late without the slip? Do you get fired, or you get reprimanded severely?
Depends on how bad your company is.
You get the stick.
But for some schools, it is sometimes school gates close.
Oh, is that right?
If you're not there by the time the gate closes, you have a problem, depending on how strict your school is.
School gates close. Okay, well, fair enough.
But if you then have a slip in saying, "Look, my train line was actually late. I wasn't just like trying to save cats off trees." Then you can actually probably get let back in. But Japan is a culture of being very punctual. The trains are punctual. The school starts on time. Work is very much on time. So being tardy is actually not really forgiven in Japan.
And you also can't really be too early either. It's frowned upon to arrive too early as well.
Oh yeah, if Japanese trains are at the station too early, they will literally stop there and wait until it's their time and then leave. There's no let's be early a little bit earlier generally and
hustle.
Stuff like no.
So, on the dot.
On the dot, they will leave. Then if they're a bit early, they will wait. It's pretty interesting how this is all works. Also, ironically, you cannot talk on the phone on the train, but you can drink on the train.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, right? Because in Hong Kong, it's the other way around. People talk on the phone loudly, why? Yelling into the phone, especially old ladies. But you can't eat or drink anything on the train. People are very upset if you try and eat and drink on the train. Tokyo, Japan, other way around. Stay off the flippin' phone, but you can people get drunk on the train.
People do drink on the train. But I think since the whole COVID thing, if you eat on the train, people kind of give you the stinky eye a little bit.
Yeah, but the stinky eye is nothing but a stinky eye. It's not a rule or anything, is it? It's not a law. It's just an eye covered in stink.
generally, a couple of rules I would like to take you guys if you come to Japan so you don't upset people. A lot of Japanese people will not straight out tell you off, but first of all, before you get even on the train, there will generally be a line. People will line up. Do not cut into that line. It will make people so angry at not you, but your entire race if you cut in line. Because you might be cool in your country, and I know there's a couple of countries where that goes. It does not fly in Japan, and it will make people furious if you do that, especially if sometimes people will actually wait for an entire train, like one train goes, just so they're standing right at the front so they can go in first so they can get a seat.
Get a seat, that's right.
So first of all, line up.
Yep, line up.
Oh yeah.
Please line up.
Oh, sorry. There's even I'm getting like very passionate about that.
Well, there's a lot of times there's two lines. There's the next train and there's the next train. So once this line goes to the train, these guys move over and now the next train.
Yeah, some people who will actually, that it will actually be a little line on the floor, like you explained it, that will say this is for the next train. So people will line up on the right-hand side if they really want to get a seat.
This one's for the express train, this one's for the semi-express, this one's for the local train.
It can get confusing because there's a lot of types of trains. So generally the rule of thumb is see if you have the right platform. But on the same platform, the same train to the same location might stop at every milk can or might be an express train. So you need to also have the exact time when that train leaves. There are a couple of apps online now that help you figure out, is that an express? Which one do you need? But you need to always remember it. It needs to be the right platform and it needs to be the right time. Because you might just, lucky, there's one train early and you hop on it and it's a local and it stops at every milk can and it takes you an hour longer to get you to
say every milk pan?
Milk can. No, there's a German saying. It stops at every milk can, like the milkman, who will stop at every milk can and
a milk can. That's what you're saying.
Yes, every milk can and fill up the milk. So meaning it takes a long time.
Hang on. Milchflasche.
And stoppt an jeder Milchkanne.
Milchkanne. Punctuality is taken so seriously that if you are a train conductor, you need to purchase a special pillow.
I'm not sure if that's purchased or whether it's just given to you. I'm not quite sure. I have never seen that pillow, to be honest.
You must sleep with.
I can't vouch for anything.
You must sleep on top of a particular pillow, and what happens is it's like an alarm clock, except it's like an auto-inflating pillow underneath the small of your back. So it's impossible for you to sleep in because this pillow will actually launch you out of the bed. It'll inflate and you'll go, oh dear, you'll be toppled out of your bed so you are not possible to run late for work.
Yeah, punctuality is incredibly important.
Ridiculous.
But let's go back to little rules for riding the train.
Tell me a rule.
I'd like you guys to know that in case you're coming to Japan, you need to know that. First of all, stand in line.
Stand in line, you heathen.
Secondly, let the people who are in the train come out first before you get in. Again, people get angry if you just push in. Let them get out, then you go in. If you can't get a seat, deal with it. All of us who come in from different areas, we're used to standing in the train. We barely get to sit down, do we? No matter where you are, you barely get to sit down.
Wear comfortable shoes.
Wear comfortable shoes. I've seen a lot of ladies with heels on the train, and I'm like, wow.
And I have a question as well. Maybe this is not in our script. It's a genuine question for you. So in Australia, when I was a younger human, I was always raised that if someone older than you gets on the train or the bus, you should stand up and give them your seat, right? But in Japan, that's
different.
It's different. I've tried to do that, and old people have gotten offended because they think I'm implying that they're so frail that they're incapable of standing up.
I think generally the amount of people who say no, it's fine. Will be less than the amount of people you're saving. So in the end, I think even if you one or so tries might get someone who says like, no, I don't need it, that's fine as long as you will stand up the time when someone really needs it, right?
Yeah, let's encourage politeness. Let's say still give up your seat for the frail.
But in Japan, there is this unwritten rule that on the normal seats, you do not really get up for someone else. But there are priority seats at the back or the end or both of a train, which will actually have a different color. And they will also say priority seats. And those seats you are supposed to get up and leave for people who need it more than you do.
Specifically the pregnant, the ill, the elderly, etc.
Yeah. And it's sad because there's a lot of Japanese businessmen who just sit down and pretend to sleep.
Children sitting at sometimes.
Yeah, but it's generally the Japanese businessmen who just, very young guys too, who will just sit down there and pretend to sleep because they don't want to get up. Don't be one of them, is what I'm saying. I've had actually a situation once where exactly that happened. They ran in, they took just any seat they could have, and it was just full of like young guys in their 20s pretending to be asleep. And then the girl on crutches came in. And no one got up for her. So I was in the different area of the seats, which actually is not a priority seat, but I waved her over and gave her my seat because she was about to cry because no one was getting up for her.
Oh, really? She's going to cry?
Yeah, she was like, how is she going to... She couldn't even stand on the train. How's that poor girl supposed to drive?
Well, you're a quality human being, Cathy Cat, for giving her your chair.
Yeah, seriously, guys, if you can get up, know, people will appreciate it. If people say, no, it's fine, that's their deal, but at least you will have done the right thing.
You would have. And Cathy Cat, explain the women's only carriage.
There is okay. The history of it is pretty dark, so I'm not going to mention that. But unfortunately, it's necessary in Japan to have women-only carts. It is not a discrimination towards men. It is not a discrimination towards women. It is unfortunately a necessity, especially during those crowded times. Remember when we mentioned at the start how crowded the trains can get, and there are certain trains who have long distances. They're coming from Chiba, they're coming from Saitama, so the stops between the train stations are quite long, and unfortunately, very unfortunately, there's a lot of bad people who touch women on trains. That's why there are women-only carts during those really rush hour times, because it might sound weird, but if it's really, really crowded and you're richly squished with people all around you, you don't know where a hand is coming from. Some people, they know. Like, they have their own little ugly forums of horror where they literally exchange, like, which train stops how long, or if there actually is a delay, which means that some trains will be even more packed. They on purposely will ride those trains. As they have their own little horror scenario going on there. That's why women-only cars have become a necessity. Not just to protect women, but unfortunately protecting little girls, because especially schoolgirls, are often targeted in Japan. So they have now a carriage that, at least for that really rush hour time in the morning, they will be protected from that sort of harassment. We've done actually videos on that on Ask Japanese as well. It is very unfortunate. It's been happening. It's continuing to happen. So that's why it's not a discrimination towards men. And not discrimination towards women, it's just to protect those who need the protection, mainly very young girls and women.
So, gentlemen, if you do come to Japan, obviously stay away from the women's only car at the allotted time period, obviously.
And it is actually not even that long.
Yeah, I'm confused by it, because I've never seen it when it is only women. When is it only women?
It's literally a very, very short span, and it's also decided on when that train leaves and when that train arrives at certain stations. Okay. So it's kind of confusing, because you're like, wait a second, it's not 9, but there's already guys on that. So it's a bit grey, and I think a lot of people are also trying to push back on that a lot to make sure, I want to be on that train as well. I want to have more space. But it's not, sorry, it's not more space. There is not more space. It's just that it gives women a safe environment in the morning to ride on. Sorry, I exploded.
It's all right. You need a moment?
No, I'm good. Sorry.
All right.
It's very unfortunate that it has to be necessary, but it is unfortunately very necessary in Japan.
On that happy note, I think we've gotten to the end of this train-stacular.
There is so much more to talk about the Japanese railways and the beauties, how rural railways are really trying to make things special. Wrestling trains, for example. Tourist trains, trains that are restaurants, trains that are hotels.
Are there haunted trains?
Probably
there
around
must
Halloween.
Be.
There will
be
around Halloween. There are Halloween trains, all kinds of seasonal trains, cricket trains, trains with like soothing smells and all kinds of shenanigans. So if you're curious about the wonders of trains in Japan, then check out Japan Railway Journal. It is for free on the internet. You just type in NHK World, Japan Railway Journal, and there's tons of episodes we have made to talk about the beautiful things of the railway industry.
Hosted by the one and only, the lovely Cathy Cat.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I have always a wonderful, wonderful hair on these episodes. I definitely recommend you guys. Sometimes some of those episodes are also on YouTube, in case you are currently watching this on YouTube, so you don't even have to search that far. But generally, I can recommend you to actually go to NHK.
Did you just say wonderful hair?
Yeah, I have a hairstylist who does my hair for those episodes.
Oh, well, in that case, you have to watch now.
It's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. This is what I did today, but she's like a pro. She'll make me look amazing every time.
Cathy Cat, where do people find you on the internet?
Cathy Cat, _TV, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Ask Japanese, YouTube, but since we've been talking about it, Japan Railway Journal, NHK World, definitely. Let's find out more about the goods and the wonders and the beauty of Japanese railways. And Ladybeard, where can we find you?
At Ladybeard_Japan, and of course my group Babybeard, which is at Babybeard_Japan. I don't host Japan Railway Journeys, so don't expect to see me. That journal. I also don't host Japan Railway Journeys. So don't expect to see me in either of those places, one of which is mythical. And but you should watch Cat with Beard from Japan on the YouTube.
Oh yes, please.
And you should clickety-clack the subscribe and the podcast player. You should also subscribe it, like it there.
Us. Yeah, subscribe on the podcast app that you're watching or listening us from now as well. And don't forget to rate us with the highest amount of stars and love.
Please, thank you.
So more people actually will get us recommended to them. Thank you so much.
You can leave comments on the YouTube if you've got a question for us, a topic you'd like us to cover. Go ahead, leave a comment, leave a question.
Put it on the YouTube or put it on our Twitter, Cat with Beard.
And
if you can't find us straight away, then type in Cat with Beard from Japan. And then you're bound to find us.
I got a feeling someone made a meme of a cat that has a beard, so maybe we're in competition with that meme.
Cat with Beard
from Japan.
All right, guys,
See you next time.